My name is Constable Calcott. I'm a Wiradjuri man, I have a disability, and I'm a member of the First Peoples Disability Network Australia. I wasn't raised on country and I missed out on traditional ceremonies and initiations, but I'm still a proud Aboriginal man with a strong spirit. I live and work in the white man's world. I'm not pretending to know all traditional ways of every mob and community, but I respect that they exist and I would love to learn more. I know that this would make me an even stronger Aboriginal man and advocate. My upbringing and experiences have taught me a lot, especially how to listen. This helps me a lot because my role is to make sure that the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living with disabilities are heard. Looking back, I don't remember getting polio. I was too young, about 18 months old if that. Mum and Dad had 5 kids at the time, 4 sisters, and I was the only one that caught it. I now have 5 sisters and a brother. I don't know whether it was a reaction to the vaccine or whether it was because I didn't finish the vaccine that I didn't have full immunity. It doesn't really matter to me what caused it. I had a really good upbringing. My parents were such a good balance. Mum was the nurturing, protective one, and Dad expected me to just get on with life and do stuff. They had their problems and eventually divorced, but they still respected each other. Mum was the one who made sure I got to all my doctor's appointments. Imagine a 23-year-old woman with 4 kids in tow, 1 in leg irons, travelling across from the western suburbs of Sydney by public transport, catching buses and trains to get into the city. These were the days when there was no special benefits. There was no transport subsidies or home modifications. The Crippled Children's Society and the Northcote School for Special Children were pretty much all that there was. I guess Dad was probably the one who was more troubled with my disability. I heard that he punched a hole in the wall when he found out that I had polio. I guess the disappointment was around the physical stuff. As an Aboriginal man, the way you usually show your manhood is through your physicality, through things like sport. Dad would take me places with his mates and their sons. I would see their footy photos and their trophies, and I could see the sadness in his eyes. I could see that this was how he would have liked to have related to me, but it was taken away from him. He had a disability of his own. He had lost his fingers, but this didn't stop him. He still built things. We didn't see him as having a disability. We just saw him doing things, but doing them differently. He didn't drive. He walked everywhere. He would carry me around with him and would give me a ride to school on his push bike. I remember living in a settlement wearing leg irons. Dad building me a billy cart and me having to wedge my legs in. Me on this 3-wheeler bike on top of a hill, 1 leg sticking out, 1 foot on the pedals, tearing down the street and straight into the neighbour's fence. I just kept on doing stuff to keep up with the other kids. I'm lucky I survived it all. Sometimes I hated having polio, the aluminium splints, the endless operations and time spent in hospital, the way people treated you. I sometimes wondered why me, but I guess I quickly learned to block all the negative stuff and focus on what I could do. I was never treated too differently from the rest of the kids at home. We didn't really have a word or a concept of disability in our family or in our culture. It wasn't such a big deal. If something didn't work, you just found another way. My family never talked to me about what I couldn't do. I never saw myself as disabled, just someone who found different ways to do things. I never got any special treatment at home, and I wasn't mollycoddled. I learned to figure out my own way to do things. I had to weed the garden, mow the lawns, like all the others. I learned to ride my push bike and eventually how to drive. I don't think I fully realised just how important my upbringing was until I was older and working in the disability area. I remember going to support a guy from the Spastic Centre in one of my earlier jobs. This guy had less of a physical disability than I have, but had been institutionalised and was not able to do the things that I was able to do. I believe I'm a stronger person because I was brought up and treated like all the other kids. Even today I do as much as I possibly can physically around the home. I do as much heavy stuff as possible and my partner never tries to stop me. Outside of the home was a different matter. It's funny what you remember. I used to notice that whenever I had operations and was in plaster, people would treat me differently. I think it's because they thought that what I had was only temporary. Growing up, my sisters were very protective, especially my older sister, the one who's closest to me in my age. I suppose she had seen me being picked on. She used to stick up for me and get into heaps of fights. She developed quite a reputation. The other kids soon learnt that if they didn't treat me right, they would have to deal with her. I'm lucky that my family and friends don't see my disability, and this is because I still do stuff like everyone else, and I do stuff for other people. Once when I was much older, my dad and I were out at the club. We were with his mates. He started telling his friends about what I did, working with kids and people living with a disability, and he told his mates how proud he was of me and what I do. Mum would always say how proud she was, but this was the first time Dad had ever said it. You know, you're never too old to hear that your father is proud of you, and I didn't realise just how important it was to me until he said it. Recently, one of my friends was trying to describe me to someone else, telling this person about all the things I do and all the amazing opportunities I've had to do artwork and to give back to my community and to promote Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with disabilities. The other person happened to ask if I was the guy with the limp. My friend just said, "Oh yes, that's him. I'd forgotten about that." Having a disability and being gay was very confronting because everything is so physically orientated. Again, I was very lucky to have found such a strong group of friends. I have a partner and we have been together for over 16 years. So even the physical perfection side of the gay culture didn't end up being as important as I first thought it would be. As I've gotten older, I've sometimes wondered if I had the opportunity to go back and not have polio, would I do it? And you know, I can honestly say that I don't think I would. Having polio is a part of me, a part of who I am and who I have become. I don't think I would have done all the things I have done without having had it. Being such a big bloke, I think I might have been tempted to become an overpowering person who was inclined to be a bit ashamed of my culture. And I don't think I would have become such a strong advocate. I'm not even sure I would have become an artist. Having a disability probably knocked me down a peg or two, but it has heightened my senses to lots of other things. It forced me to find things that I like about myself, and it has led me on an amazing path. I have a job and a role that isn't tokenistic. I never would have gotten to do these things if I didn't have a disability, and it has ended up having such a positive impact on my life.